talk show where we're kicking it and having fun on inspirational radio. We're the talk show, kicking it and having fun. So turn your radio up.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I know you are tuning in, and normally on Fridays you expect to see the re-up, but we got a special opportunity today to do an episode of Pillow Talk. So the person next to me is no stranger. She's been on the re-up before, and we've actually done a couple of episodes of Pillow Talk. But with today's current events and, unable to lock down the schedules between me and the rest of my co-hosts this week, we, wanted to do something special for you guys. So, and talk about, some relationship type stuff. And who better to talk about with it than the person I am in a relationship with, long-term, wifey. Fort just celebrated 14 years a month or so ago. About to celebrate a birthday. Her birthday. But hey, welcome.
Thank you.
How you been?
I think you know how I've been, but I've been good.
You been good?
Yes.
Hey, I got to do this like an interview.
Okay.
Anything you want to say to the people since you've been gone for a minute?
No. I'll probably do a lot of talking a little bit later. So.
Okay. Well, let's just jump right into it then.
Okay.
So, as always, we start off with some of the current event news, and there's a lot going on. Again, I say it every episode. We can talk about Donald Trump. We can talk about, all kinds of different stuff. You don't want to talk about Donald Trump? Okay, we're not going to talk about that. But one of the things that I know that's been all over my social media feed this week has been a situation with Keke Palmer and her boyfriend, Darius. I don't know what Darius's last name is, but and by now I think most of you guys have probably heard about that situation, but we wanted to talk about it from a Christian couple point of view, or a Christian couple that's been going through life and understanding or trying to understand relationships in a very transparent and way, right? So a lot of thoughts with it, a lot of opinions. I know I've seen, regarding the situation. Just to sum it all up, Keke Palmer, I always want to call her Keke Shepherd. My wife always, correct me, but Keke Palmer went to an Usher concert. Shout out to Usher. From what I heard, the concert is pretty nice.
Right.
But Keke Palmer had on a very, risque type dress, a little see-through, bodysuit underneath. Did some grinding and some things like that. And of course, her boyfriend, Darius, did not like the situation. And so on Twitter, when the picture was posted, he commented on that picture that, something about her being a mom, it's to dress for him. And then he kind of doubled down later and, just basically explained that his, he has boundaries. He has things that he doesn't want his wife or his girlfriend
Right.
doing that disrespects her. Disrespects him and his family and household. So again, you can Google all of that. That's not necessarily the most important part about this situation, but we wanted to talk a little bit about that. And then recently, this is going to lead into another conversation with Jonah Hill and his girlfriend or fiance or potential fiance or whatever, and how he handled that situation. So I'll start with that first, though, with Keke Palmer. This is your opportunity to share your thoughts about that situation.
From the standpoint of Keke, first of all, she looks amazing. She looks absolutely stunning. To just have had a baby, her snapback is very real, and I commend her on that. I think that I understood where Darius, or that's the young man's name, I understood where he was coming from. The only thing that I would see I would have done differently if I were him is it's just a home matter. I think that just wisdom about relationship is keep your relationship in your house. You know what I'm saying? I think that because he used the platform to comment, confront, whatever, it made it everybody's business at this point. So there's a lot of commentary, a lot of, we like to choose, we like to be divided. It's she can wear whatever she want to wear, and then I'm sure men have their take on it, but they're young too. I mean, I think they're not married, and I think that we really come down hard on people when we see them make a mistake. I don't keep up with celebrity stuff. I just don't. But from what I think I understood was that people were then start dragging him and all in his comments and and I know we like to pretend like our relationships be all together, but I see toxic people every day. So the difference between, and they're not toxic, but I'm saying the difference between their relationship and the next person is that it's on a platform. You know what I'm saying? And so it makes it harder for you to work out common life things because you've got an audience. So he's entitled to his feelings. And truth be, I mean, he had a reason. She was shaking all of that in front of Usher. Hey, I understand. He was like, hey, you're not answering my phone or whatever. I don't know what the backstory is. I'm just making up something, but he put it on, he put his feelings out there. And so
you mentioned, a couple of things, I think that's key. Because, I'm going to respond from a Christian male standpoint, but you mentioned a couple of things that I like you to, talk a little bit more about. Like, again, Keke looked really nice and
right.
She looked beautiful. But, I think I have the same issue. Matter of fact, my only issue with that whole situation, no matter what side you lean on, is the fact that it was done and addressed in public.
Right.
Anything that a person, like, if you publicly talk crazy to me, I don't care who you are, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And my wife, and you embarrass me, that's just as disrespectful, I think, like, as anything. Because maybe I don't know, maybe I do, I'm in a season of my life where I'm not thinking in the way that I need to be thinking. They're not married yet. I've heard that too, but maybe Keke's not in a marital mind, frame or whatever. Is there a difference between that?
We really don't know what, I think the part of relationships is that we make an assumption off of a fragment of something. Mm-hmm. So like, we'll say to our girlfriend, we'll hear our girlfriend say, he stayed out all night, he did this, he didn't come home for a week. I don't know. And then you thinking in your mind, girl, I ain't no way I would put up with that. You know what I'm saying? But the issue is that we don't live in that home. And most times when we're showcasing a picture of something, we never show ourselves. We always talking about what the other person doing. So we don't know what their relationship is like. And we don't know if that's a private conversation that then bubbled over to something public. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. She's always been just a really outgoing, seeing her in movies and stuff. She seems like she just got so much personality. She's, just a bunch of energy. So I'm sure she draw people in, and you know what I mean? And so to me, being a successful young woman for a very long time, I think there's layers to it. And not saying that, I don't know him at all, but I think that when you have people that are pillars, they need a certain type of person that can be with them. You know what I'm saying? And if they're not one of those parts is not like really secure, it makes it hard. And I'm not saying again, I don't know these people. I'm just saying from the little snapshot, it seems like they're just like anybody else, but she's not, because she is well known and she may have worked on projects with Usher before. I don't know, you know what I mean? So it's pictures, it's pieces of it that we don't see. So just from a surface level, I just felt like it was just something that was a personal thing that should have just been handled, in their home.
And so I think that's the lesson, right? And this is what I mean, my opinion, and what I would actually share with my male counterparts in some similar situations. If you're in a relationship with someone, one of the things that I've learned and that I'm learning to do more is to try to be very transparent and upfront about, my expectations, what my boundaries are, what my, hurt points,
Right.
could be. And that's not something that I think is normal for a lot of men. I think it's something because pride is involved, so we really don't want to act like we just don't want to be prideful about it, right?
I want to interrupt you for 1 second because I'm gonna forget. You've done a really good job of working on and working out different things that you know about yourself and your own insecurities, and you work them out through our relationship. So it's allowed me to maybe be more patient, be more kind with something that I know might be touchy. So like everybody didn't probably have a relationship, and there might have been somebody might have stepped out or something like that, something that's caused a distrust. So then when you go into another situation, you always thinking about that looked like that the last time. It alters you in such a way that you just keep bringing that baggage forward. So a woman that's beautiful, everybody wants something good on their arm, you know what I mean? But you got to be secure in that, you know what I'm saying? And so,
Well, we just saw a video. I just saw it today. I think you said you saw it before, where Bishop T.D. Jakes was talking with his wife,
right.
And one of the things he suggested is that men, we give you signs, we try to speak sign language, or we expect you to
Understand
to automatic, like the verbiage that I'm hearing from a lot of people, especially on social media, is she should know she had a baby with him and she shouldn't disrespect that relationship, right?
But disrespect is such a relative term. Like anything can be disrespectful from your point of view and not be disrespectful from the person who's doing it.
But regardless, that's their expectation,
Right.
right? And what I would say to most men is that a fair expectation? Like, going back to my point about us not vocalizing what our boundaries are, or what, things, we expect in a relationship, or that we want to hold true to in a relationship. And, I think it's something that you need to have a conversation and vocalize. Most people, when we date, and I think we've talked about this in some of our Men versus Women, we just put our best foot forward. We want to make the person that we're trying to impress feel as comfortable as possible, and we want to, put forth our, I guess, a product and our representative, right? But and if it's somebody that you're planning on spending some time with, obviously they had a baby together, so they had to, to me, that tells me that you're trying to be serious. Once you get to that level or whatever, it's it's important to have those conversations and set those, at least those expectations up front. Because if you don't, and again, I'm talking to my men, I'm pretty sure this applies to women too. I don't think it's fair to hold someone accountable for something when they do it afterwards. Now, if we talk about it, like you said, if they had a private conversation about it, and she still ended up wearing this dress or doing whatever she wanted to do, then great. But again, why are we dealing with it in the public face?
That's my only thing, because I think we're taking what we always do is we're peeping through a window, through the curtain, and we don't really know the full. I don't know if that's how she always dressed. Is that what she had on when she met him? Is that what she had on when they made the baby? I don't know.
And she dressed pretty risque.
But what I'm saying is, so if you came into a situation, and this is how I am when you met me, then is it what's the conversation piece, or what's missing there when I'm still doing me, but now you got a problem with it? So we don't know what that is. You know what I'm saying? Like if she was already dressing that way and they had a baby.
And again, I think it goes back to what I was saying. I think men, when we enter that relationship, and this is, I don't think the best way to think now in retrospect, but we think that, okay, because I'm committed to you, you're going to do respect. You're going to know what it is to respect a relationship with me. And that's not true. You said something earlier, or I don't know if you said, maybe we were having a conversation, but as far as relationships, like respect looks different for, every person. You know what I mean? Something might be super disrespectful to someone when it's not to another. But again, if you're not communicating those or taking time to really figure that out before you get into a situation, a marriage, a fiancé-ship, baby daddy situation, then situations like this to me is apt to happen.
Lack of communication.
You know what I mean? Like,
and I think that through talking, you'll find out a lot. I don't know if you remember, like last week we were watching that stupid little video where they swap phones.
Oh,
and the girl was cheating and the boy was cheating, and he was like, "Yeah, I do what I do, but she can't do what I do."
Right.
So it's like a double standard there. Like it was all right for him to be texting somebody to come over, but he was just appalled that she was texting whatever the case may have been. So communication works out those type of things, because one person could be really ready for something else, or another level of relationship, and the other person could be remedial. They're not ready for that. You know what I mean? So oftentimes, not to make it a color thing, but in the African American community, we are struggling in the relationship. We'll just be like, what do they say? That's just my friend, or or the how many people we might be together for a minute before we decide to get married. So it's different things where marriage is something that definitely has to be modeled in front of you, and you grow up in marriage. You don't come into a marriage as an adult. Marriage is a thing that is a tool that is used to mature you, and it cracks down on you. And so we're seeing two people that are dating. One, in my opinion, seems like, hey, girl, you got my baby. I don't want my baby mama out here like that. So it seems like, one is maybe ready for something else, but I agree with you. There definitely seems to be a lack of communication, and just the overall understanding of us being together. What does that really mean? What does that look like? Now we have a child together. It's a transition type moment for them.
And so you mentioned race thing, right? And earlier I mentioned that Jonah Hill and his girlfriend / fiance or whatever had a similar situation that she made public, right? Mm-hmm. And so, bottom line for me is, and it sounds like for you as well, is that things like this need to be handled privately, right? Need to be, an understanding. Expectations need to be set up front, and if you're communicating this and you come to the terms and realize, look, like if Keke says, hey, I still want to wear these type of clothes, or I still want to, be single, or, whatever be like that. Now you have an understanding. You can go your separate ways. It don't got to be a bunch of public drama, So Jonah Hill, just a real, quick synopsis of his current event. I guess he was texting his wife, or not his wife, his girlfriend, and basically setting boundaries, setting things. From what I can read, stuff like, I guess she's a surf instructor, so he was talking about her surfing with males and inappropriate relationships with males, and taking pictures in bikinis and stuff like that. He had a list of all stuff that, were, I'll call them trigger points for him, like
Right.
boundaries or whatever for him. And at the bottom of it, basically, he said something as, if this is something that you can't do or you're not good with, then, we can go our separate ways or whatever.
Right.
So two things. One, it was super weird. The people tried to make this a race thing. But it's a big difference to this. Jonah was having these conversations privately and she made them public.
That's a very valid point.
And in her public, making it public, she was claiming that he was being misogynistic. All right. And so that's where, I'm seeing the big blow up. People, one lady I know we saw said, oh, you're so brave because, a lot of this happens in private and people never know about it. And this is what, misogynistic men, look like or whatever. But, again, I would disagree with that. Again, I think some of his, things could be a little strict or whatever. But, going back to what we said earlier, I think it's different for each person. You know what I mean? It's different it's based off of your trauma. It's based off of what you went through and other relationships.
It really depends on, my thing is comparison. Comparison really does kill because you'll see a relationship and you'll want whatever that peek through the curtain, want whatever that is, but you don't know what it's like to be that woman, or you don't know what it's like to be that man. You don't know. You could look at it and be like, ain't no way in the world I'm doing that. Right. That's what she's doing. Or vice versa. Somebody's looking at you saying there's no way I would do that. And you looking back at them and say, baby, I wouldn't do what you do either. So again, putting it in a better way is, I have grace for your insecurities. I have grace for the things that the next person don't have grace for. So that's why that person can look on and say, I have grace for it. You have grace for mine. You know what I'm saying? And that's how we're able to work out our things. Plus, sharing, but we do a lot of communicating and we do a lot of speaking in truth to one another, speaking in truth and love to one another. And so it allows for a safe, vulnerable place for us to be able to share in that space. That's very key because sometimes you're dealing with, you always say it, you're dealing with the fruit of something and not the root of it. And so we don't know why Jonah Hill is taking this stance. But if she loved him enough to try to, I don't know these people, to try to get to the source of it, or maybe he has shared with her, but it's something that's provoking him to take this type of stance for himself. That's not, his boundaries was about him. That, I don't know if that makes you a narcissist because,
or misogynist.
Yeah, because you want, I don't know.
But here's the thing though. Because, what I said earlier is most men wouldn't even break that down or articulate their feelings about that type of stuff because they, one, either expect you to already gravitate to that, which, again, I'm telling you, fellas, that's an unrealistic expectation because your head, I know you think there might be some general things that all men think or whatever, but there's going to be some nuances there. And then two, again, having a man open up and tell you up front, like, these are some things that I struggle with or that I would struggle with in a relationship, that's gold to a woman. That's really a good thing. Like, again, if you think that's misogynistic, that's your way to just say, okay, great. I'm going to move on to someone else who doesn't care about that.
And what it showed me is that somebody is not on the same page. They're not as real as somebody thought they were. Because if it was that, and again, we're just looking at what they have displayed, but it was just like, to me, I don't like when people have disputes and they gotta bring other people in it. To me, and that's just not even a relationship like a man and a woman dating. I'm no longer your friend. When you have to go and you have to go badmouth somebody about the situation, it don't look bad for the person you badmouth, it look bad for you. Because if we ever get into it, I know what you're gonna do. So it was immature. It's a lack of maturity.
Mm-hmm.
That again, not only should have just been private, but you just as a woman, that to me, that's not a woman. See, look, look what he did. Look what he texted me. Look what, you know what I mean? Like,
and whatever side you're on, again,
I have
if you're
no
a
side.
woman,
I don't know them.
but that's what I'm saying, and, to our listeners, if you're on the side where, a woman should be able to wear what she want to wear, and da 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 da, or you on the side where a woman should be modest and respect the relationship he's in and whatever, it don't really matter. It matters to the couple and
That's
the
exactly
conversation.
where it matters,
So like
because
me and you can have a conversation. We may have like a set of things, do's or not to do's in our relationship, and it may be different from some another
Correct.
couples or anything else. But the whole point is communication, and what that showed me there is you have a man which is he's doing something that a man, I promise you, normally probably wouldn't do to
the
that level.
language he used was very
Like he
he's
was in
been
counseling or
therapy.
something.
Yeah, like he's taking some type of therapy. So it may have been something that he's consulted with someone, and the advice was, hey, you have to let. And what was interesting about it is because usually people who struggle with boundaries, they have to state their boundaries.
And they have to go to.
They have to state them because they let people break, or they break their own. So he had to state those things to her, which, maybe they've had, I'm just assuming, I don't know them, maybe they've had conversations about it, and she just, it's fine. I don't know. But they said she was a surf instructor, so she's gonna be
probably a
man.
model, and
she gonna have her cheeks out somewhere. So I mean, I can understand by that being her profession, it's some conversation, because that's how she make her money. So, again, peep through the window. Was she supposed to quit this job? What was supposed to happen? Because what she does, what she was doing when you met her, or whatever the case may be. So again, it always comes down to the details.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the details because we are not them. So it's hard for me to just have a opinion about it, because,
and I don't think the opinion matters.
But I mean, that for social media, everybody got an opinion on. You say left, we gonna say right. Oh, he's this kind of man, that kind of man, and none of us really know him.
But that's the example. That's the perfect example of, again, two people getting into a relationship. Everyone has their own opinion and point of view around what that needs to be. And, what I would, definitely recommend and impress upon, my fellas and the ladies is for you to be really good at communicating about that. We're talking about the therapy. I went through therapy, and one of the things that came about in my earlier life was my inability to set boundaries, my inability to put, just to be transparent about it, what it was doing to me inside. Like, I would be someone, I would allow something to happen, right? I would think about it. I would have an issue with it, but I would just go along with it to appease whoever I'm with, right? The issue with that, and this is just a known fact, and a lot of men, I would say, do this. I don't know if women do this or not, but I'm just going to speak from a male standpoint. You internalize those feelings to an extent to where, that frustration continues to just build up and build up and build up.
Right.
Now, either, you're going to get sick from that physically, mentally, whatever at that point, but it's not a good situation. So, when I was, going to therapy about that, it was just brought to my attention that there were certain things, and not necessarily big things, didn't have to be a big issue, but it would be things that if I had never stated to that person, like, hey, when you do X, Y, and Z, that bothers me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I know.
And then I'm holding, but, if I'm not talking to them about it, I'm holding them accountable for something that I just expect them to know at that point. right? Okay. I mean, this was before I met you, so I've been applying these lessons in this relationship.
Hey,
But that's why
that.
I'm a big proponent on communicating. And according to you, sometimes I might be over communicating, but you never know. You always know where I stand mentally or where I'm at. I'm learning emotionally from you.
Mhm.
I'm able to articulate that, and I try to create a space for you to articulate what you're thinking and what your boundaries are.
Right.
And that's goes back to your safe place thing. So,
It's about balance and giving. My huge thing is just grace. Like I know for a fact we live off grace, and because we're heavily coated with grace, we gotta give grace in relationships. We have to. I mean, I haven't met a perfect person. So with that being the case, people gonna mess up. People they're gonna wig out. They're gonna have, you're gonna see them exposed. You know what I'm saying? So when they expose themselves, it's up to us to figure out what to do with it. And I don't believe in blasting people when they're showing they're hurt. You know what I'm saying? That's just not me. Now it could be against me and I'll be upset about it, but I don't feel that my response to that is to let me drag you, let me go show the world. Like those things that I'm a keeper of. So those things are just gonna live in here and I'm gonna be frustrated or whatever, or processing it or whatever. But to go and just bash somebody. I'm not, that's just not me. I'm not with that.
And that overall, I think as Christians, because I've said this before when we were talking about relationships with each other, relationships with another person, individual, especially someone that you care about, teaches us how to have relationships with other people, even outside of our relationship. Yeah. And one of the things is someone more susceptible to listen to you if you put them on blast in public, embarrass them, or are they more susceptible to be defensive? No matter what you're saying, you could be saying the absolutely right thing. Like Darius could be absolutely right, but because of how
you say, it's how you say
it, when you say it, who you say it in front of,
right?
All of that really matters, and you have to take that into perspective. So even as Christians, I say this all the time. Like if you run up to someone on the street and tell them about whatever you think is going on, whatever is wrong with their life, why do we get surprised when they respond in a defensive manner? And that's again this principle that we're talking about in a relationship, in a marriage. Like if I come to my wife and I put her in a defensive posture, then any content or anything that I'm saying at that point, is it really going to be heard? Is it really going to be received? And if our heart is resolution, or our heart is to fix or address the issue, then we should definitely care about how that information is given.
People can have
and when and how.
A defensive nature in general. So you're already working from the back. You're already working because as soon as I've known people that as soon as you say anything to them, they get on guard. That wasn't me. Or you always blame me, or automatically no accountability when it could be 100% them. But just having a defensive nature, you're never gonna get anywhere if you charging a bull like that. It's just not gonna happen. You know what I mean? I'm a very defensive person. But what I've learned in our marriage is that I run things through filters because I'm also a very factual person. I put it in buckets. Like if you tell me something, I'll run it through my mind before I respond, and I'll say, is that a him issue or is that a me issue? What do you gain from it by this conversation? And that helps me separate it out. Like, I know you didn't say that because you trying to destroy me. You know what I mean? Like, so that must mean that what you're saying to me is for my benefit. So it helps me to let down that guard as painful as it may be, whatever you're saying, it might be something that I don't even want to talk about. Like, leave that alone. Why are we talking about that? But it helps me to receive it because my initial response is protective. It's gonna go up, and I don't care what you're talking about, And then I have to really run it through these channels. One thing I learned in marriage is you have to be slow to respond. Like, sometimes you'll ask me a question and say something, and I'll feel anger or I'll feel, something kind of like this really about to get on my nerves, and I'll just wait. Like, if I respond at the moment that, I feel like it could just really blow up into something, and I just wait to respond. Sometimes you'll say, did you hear me? Did you, checking for understanding, but I don't know what to do with it. Like, so instead of just responding to respond, I'm listening to so I can respond to you real quickly, I'll just be quiet.
Would you say we've gotten better
Yes.
with not being defensive over the years?
Yes, I have.
And so, what I would say to that then is, and again, this goes back to that principle, people are less defensive when the trust is
Correct.
built and when a relationship is built. You know what I mean? Because now we're in a situation where I'm not trying to hurt you. I know you're not trying to hurt me. So our conversations don't come from that. And I guess my point is, if you're running up to someone on the street that you don't know, that you don't have a relationship, so you're already, to your point, it could be a very defensive person already, or the fact that you're approaching them in an aggressive manner could cause them to be defensive. Right. You know what I mean? So, definitely early in relationships, I think there's going to be this building of trust and building of understanding. Like, I talk to people all the time and they feel like, oh, well, we dated for, sometimes me and you knew each other for 4 years before we got married. Right. But that's still different from the institute of marriage and actually getting into a life with this person.
What I understand is you have to be intentional with whatever you're doing in your marriage. So it is just the principle of, I can't plant, so I'm not going to use plant because I don't know nothing about plants. But it's watering that, you know what I mean? So, and being intentional with it. For example, when our kids, who are no longer kids, I don't want to talk about that, but when they were little, we used to go on road trips all the time. First of all, because we got a bunch of kids, so we would have to pile up into the truck and hit the road for our family vacation. But my favorite memories of those times is everybody sleep and you and I, it's like, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and we ride it and we just talking about anything and everything. You know what I mean? In those moments, I feel like I didn't know it then because we had a lot of stuff going on, but I think those things was making deposits into the trust bank. Mm-hmm. So when we do get into an argument, we got something to pull from. When you don't be intentional with stuff, you trying to reach somewhere that you ain't putting them in. You know what I mean? And so we now actively put stuff in the trust bank, so we know it's there. And I feel like our arguments, discussions have gotten a lot better because we got something in the trust bank to actually pull from. Those times we're vulnerable, we're open, we hold accountability. You know what? I knew I should have did X, Y, and Z. Sorry, babe, it's forgiveness in that. You know what I'm saying? So to me, we try to do things in the wrong time. Like when you're having an argument, that's not the time to try to really, do you see me? Do you hear me? That's not the time. Because generally, you gotta not insult each other. You gotta not roll your eyes. You got a lot of knots to do because it's just not gonna happen there. But the times where it did die down, it's quiet, let's go for a ride. I love our, sometimes our Sundays, it's been too hot, but, drop the top and just ride, and it's just, those are the times, to sit and really talk about those things like adults, you know what I mean? Without the yelling, the screaming, the insults, you know what I'm saying? And so a big pillar after communication in using maybe communication as a vehicle is to build trust. How do you do that? This works for us, but you got to find ways to build that. Like, I'm a big advocate for when you share something with me to lock it up. You know what I mean? It's never to be shared. It's never gonna come out of my mouth. If you want to talk about it again, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna lock it up. You know what I'm saying? It's not for me to go tell, girl, let me tell you when it's not that. And it's not for me to use for when I'm upset with you. Remember when you told me what happened to you in 4th grade on the playground? You know what I mean? Like, it's not that. So I said it earlier, but marriage is a grown-up sport. It is. If you are immature coming into it, which I was, if you stay in it long enough, it's gonna grow you up.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to grow up for it to last. It's not that old school generation of folks who was married for 40 years and grandpa got to be a Rolling Stone and have kids over here, we're not our grandparents. You know what I'm saying? We're in a different time, different society. And I think that's why the clothes and things like that is more prevalent, because you don't even, I don't know, Maria, don't kick me off the show, but I don't even know if people have to pay for adult stuff, because you literally see everything on everybody for free. Like, why? Why is everything public? Do we not have any private things anymore? Is that a thing of the past? Like,
Yeah. So I wanna wrap up this section of the show, and because I really want to bring you on a conversation that me and Lasagna and Dan have been having.
Yeah, I'm tired of talking about
for a
these
while.
other people's business. I don't know them.
But I really want to just give a good summation of takeaways from these two events. Like, what recommendations would you have for the host? Like, what are just summing up everything we've talked about? Like, what would be your recommendations? Just bullet point.
Bullet point. High level. We'll go with 3. The first one would be take your relationship offline. Just
keep it private.
Keep it private. 2, what we talked about all through and through is communication. Communicate with your mate to find out if you guys are even on the same page. Is this what you want? You want to get married? What do you want? More kids? Just find out, are we even in the same, if I'm wanting something different that you don't want, which is what Jonah Hill was saying, it's like,
and it's okay.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I would have known that when I was young. Like, having boundaries, and this person that I might be attracted to, but we don't have the same.
We don't want the same
thought.
thing.
We don't want the same. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. Like, it seems like this young lady took that personal.
Right.
But honestly, that's a blessing. That's him saying, like, hey, this is going to be a problem.
Now.
Exactly. Like, for me, I don't get, I just don't get why she put it up there like that. But I think as far as, that point is concerned, open, transparent conversation, no matter if you agree with it or not, is super key. It can get you in a lot of trouble, and you should be okay if that door is closing. Like, as Christians, we know about doors closing and opening and things like that. And if the door is closed because of a certain boundary, then that just means that you weren't supposed to walk through that.
My last one is just self-reflection. Like, accountability is hard to come by these days. People are not accountable for. They always a victim in every story. Everywhere they go, and so there's no peace in that, because in the back of your mind, you give yourself grace, but again, you won't extend it to the next person. So the same measure of grace that you receive, you're supposed to give. And so I think there has to be a self-reflection. Like, everybody had been in a relationship, and it was not, that relationship didn't end because it was 100% this other person's fault. You gotta take some responsibility in that. Sometimes we allow people to do stuff to us that we know we're uncomfortable with. So that would have been a time to speak up. You don't stay with them for, X amount of time, and now I can't take it no more. Who they are at that moment, that's what you get. So we're not dating for potential. We dating for what I see today. So it's got to be some self reflection for everybody, all of us. You it's just you gotta look at within to see, how did I get here? How did we get here? How did I end up with you? How did I end up with a baby? How did look, be honest. Not with the world. This is a personal thing, and that's how you grow, and that's how you're saying, yeah, I could have made better choices about that. Or even if you got to extend grace to yourself, yeah, that was pretty stupid. I got right here, but now this is how I want to move, so that would be my top things.
And the only thing I think I would add, because those are definitely all the points that I think I got from these situations. The other thing, and you brought it up, is the trust, building trust. Yeah. We all coming to a situation not knowing certain things. You know what I mean? And even if you dated this person for a while, we've been together for we've known each other for over 20 some years. You know what I mean? So, but there's still things today that I'm learning about you and understanding about you. So. To come in to a situation and feel like you completely understand this person, you got it all figured out, like y'all already know. You said it early, it's work, and that's the work. Like constantly, getting to know each other, building trust, building an environment where you guys can communicate openly about whatever you're dealing with and wherever you're at that point. And so.
That was good.
And this is a transition, believe it or not, into something that we've been talking a lot about. And through our private conversations, we talk about the comparison between marriage and how that looks and our relationship with God. Like, the Bible describes the church as Jesus's bride, and Jesus is representative of God, right? So just this whole talk that we're having about marriage, one of the things that we've been focused on as a show for the last probably month and a half, is relationship with God. Yeah. Like, what does that look like compared to religion, right? Compared to the traditions of a church or whatever religion doctrine that you practice in Christianity, compared to what a relationship with God looks like, and then we talked about relationship with each other. Last week we talked about what it looks like practically to have a relationship with God. This week I wanted to kind of lead into is like, how do we build a relationship with God? Like, again, if I grew up in church and I was super excited about having you on this, because it's not that you didn't go to church when you were younger, but the way you met God wasn't at an altar or wasn't at a traditional church. Right. Situation, and one of the things that I've harped on in the past on our show is I think it matters. I think how we meet God dictates how our relationship is with Him. Right. You know what I mean? If you met Him at the altar, strict situation at 4 or 5 years old, your house, your mom, dad made you go to church every Sunday, and you learned all the Sunday school and Bible studies and stuff like that. I think you have a tendency to know God from a religious standpoint, or from a routine.
Your parent living off your parents' religion and structure and belief system.
I can relate to that because at 8 I got saved. I brought the pastor to my house.
Of course you did.
But it was, my mom, she became, went to Baptist churches, Pentecostal churches, all of that type of stuff, right? And every Sunday we had to be in church. We had to, pretty much when the doors open, we were there, right? Yeah. My mom is like that to this very day, actually. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It changed for me, however, though, when I got to my 20s and 21s, and in that age,
21?
yeah,
Okay.
my early 20s, basically, right? Where there was something in me that prompted me to say, you know what, the way I've learned God, I was like a member of my church already, right? Because again, I was a kid growing up in that.
Yeah.
Well, I was a member by proxy because
Yeah.
my mom was a member of the
Right.
church, right? But I was like, I need to go through membership and I need to learn all of this on my own or whatever. I think more it was a pride thing initially, but I know now that it was a God thing kind of pushing me. Um, but I had to go through a process by myself to where I had to get to know God. Had to get to understand the Holy Spirit. And if you listen to this show anytime, you know that I went through a divorce earlier in my life, right? And so all of those different things happening in that time frame, for me, I started to find a balance of growing up in a religious way, but also getting to connect with God in a more of a relational
Because
standpoint.
he's circumvents that. I think that God is not so much interested in religion. He's interested in relationship with us. And the way to have that is going to be through an encounter. He wants to get to know us.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants us to get to know him. And I think that, so to me, it doesn't really matter how it starts. Because if you walk in that journey, he's going to have ways to have that encounter with you. So though our stories and our backgrounds are different, we've both had real experiences with him, that is so strong that somebody can't walk up to you and be like, your God ain't real. You know what I mean? This is so matter of fact in me. Other things about my relationship with God, I'm walking with him to be stronger and more confident in. But how I met him, it's 100% no doubt it's him. And I don't feel, for the religious part of it, I don't feel no type of way. I don't feel like I got to try to prove to you, my God. I don't have to do that because in here, I know. So, I think that's the thing too, is that when you see a lot of people, I don't know how I know. I just know. I've experienced him. And I experienced him young. So you got to think, with all my wisdom that I have now, I had none of that. I was just a kid. And it was simple. You know what I'm saying? I was having communication with him as a child, but it was pure. You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, just as an adult, I feel like, a little tingle because I know. Like, I probably am doing a poor job to articulate it, but it's really the effects of having that moment. Having that encounter is what it felt like to me. It was peace. It was warm. It was quiet. It was still. It was all of these things that, without going into details, was a chaotic situation, and there were no adults to explain to me to run it through a filter. So as a child, I'm trying to do all of this. And it was just like, God just came and he just embraced me. And whereas I think about it even as an adult, I don't know how to survive that. You know what I'm saying? But so it's nothing but God to me.
So here's what I would say, because you said something earlier, and this is the one thing that I don't want to publicly challenge you on it, but
you publicly
I am publicly challenging you on it. But I do think that it's possible, and I'm only thinking that it's possible because I've seen people like it, that they'll get in a religious vein and stay in a religious vein.
That's not me, babe. I don't know.
No, not you. No. What you said earlier was that it doesn't matter how you meet God. He still leads you there. But I think, and the reason why it's a little challenge, because you're saying, I think, the same thing I'm saying as far as you spoke of your trauma.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what I'm saying is people who stay in a religious mind frame or a religious stance sometimes struggle with the relationship part because the structure of religion
Right.
keeps you know, like, and I'll give you an example. Like growing up, the old people used to say, "Don't question God.
Okay.
Don't. God is God. Don't just question God. Like anything going on in your life or whatever, you shouldn't question because He's sovereign, He's King or whatever." And I get that. I mean,
I don't.
he. No. I get the fact that He's Lord and
I
He's
get
sovereign,
that.
but He's also our Father, right? And so it's kind of like if you're the son of the king, if you're the heir of the king, then you have the right to ask questions of your father. You have right to do that. But what I'm saying is there's a whole generation of Christians in church right now that I'll tell you that say you shouldn't question God, like no matter what your problems are. But the key point for me in building a relationship with God
Right.
is these traumas, these things that hurt so bad. The Bible says, like, God wants that. He wants us to bring that to Him so that He can heal that He can do that. And so, in those processes, me personally in my life, I've gained more of a relationship with God through the trauma that happened in my life.
Where's the challenge at? Did I miss where the challenge is at?
The challenge was, I mean, what you said was that it doesn't matter how you meet God, that eventually you'll have a relationship with Him, and I don't agree with that because I think I've met too many people to be 60, 70, 80 years old, and they've been in church all their life because.
But they missed the opportunity. It don't. You met him in the church. I met him in the hospital. It doesn't really matter for God, though. They've had opportunities to have an encounter and have a relationship. They chose not to.
They chose not. That's what I'm saying. So they're still in the same.
He can meet you anywhere. To me, that's how I feel. I feel that he desires to have a relationship with us.
But
he
the key
desires
point
to dwell with us.
And I shouldn't have said challenge, right? Because
it's
just a slight whatever.
Okay.
But what the whole point that I want our listeners to get and see similarity is we've met Him through trauma. We've met Him through questions, asking Him real questions.
So the location don't matter though. It's the trauma.
No, right. The location doesn't matter. What does matter is our willingness to give God, to step outside of our religion and give God what's outside of our religion. And what I mean by that is, okay, you go to church every Sunday, all right? But secretly, you're hurting, you're upset at your ex-husband or your ex-wife or whatever. And so you go to church, you raise your hand, you have a moment with God, and then you go home, but you're still broken, you're still sad about it, and then you go, and I'm just telling you from my personal experience, right? And then you go to church on Wednesday, right? And they have prayer service in the morning or whatever, so you're going to pray about it there, and you're thinking that, I got to be in church for this healing, where to your point, God is, when you get a relationship, you start realizing I don't have to go to church to meet God. I don't have to go through this religious tradition to meet God. God is right here with me. He's in my home. Like, we say that all the time, like, oh, He's in my house, we anointed or whatever. But the way we deal with Him is not like that.
Which you got to understand, though, because when I got saved when I was 8 months pregnant. And I remember sitting in the pew and I just remember this pulling. Like, you got a baby in your stomach. You're not married. You got to make some real good decisions for this child. Maybe you haven't made some good ones for yourself, but this baby, he needs to have good decisions made for him. So that's what pulled me to go down and give my life to Christ. And so that within itself was amazing. But I remember leaving there thinking I was going to be different. So, and I went to a church that was really good at teaching foundational stuff. So I'm talking about the milk, they got milk down. They got meat now, but too. But the milk, it was so good for me at that time of my life because it's where I got my foundational. I didn't grow. I visited churches growing up and stuff, but I hadn't, really joined a church. I joined this church.
Mhm.
I actually brought my whole family there to join that church, and so we think of God sometimes, and it sounds very childish, but our thought of God, because we can't conceptualize, intellectually think of God. So we bring them to things that are human type things.
Mhm.
We think God is like a genie. So you think when I go in church, I raise my hands, I worship, I cry, I run around church, I get in the parking lot, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to stop drinking. But what I have learned is that God can do that. He truly can deliver us like that. But it's something in the walking it out. You do a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. So you have to also, it's not enough to just go to the building because we're really the church. We're the church wherever we go. This is a moving building. You know what I mean? But it's something about him just walking with you through the process of it. In a sense, it tends to stick.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like maybe you don't smoke a whole pack of cigarettes that week. Maybe you only do 3 that week. It's about the progression of it. The longer you walk with him, and he's constantly taking that taste, out of our mouths. You know what I'm saying? So a part of church is.
So when you say walk, what are you doing walking wise that's pushing you through a closer relationship with God?
Me personally, what I do is I try to find. I'm not gonna say a routine because you don't want to it's easy to just be doing something, just praying because it's what I'm supposed to do, So I try not to say routine, but what I personally do is I treat God as my friend. So I communicate with him all throughout the day. I make room for him.
Mhm.
I have to slow the cadence down of my day. I'm a busy person. I'm a busy woman. I'm over here. But I purposely, on purpose, will slow it down. So whereas in my car, I might not listen to music. I might get in and I might if I'm not taking, our youngest to practice at school, I'll mute it.
Mhm.
And, on my commute, I'll just worship.
Mhm.
Sometimes I put worship music on and I'm crying, mess up all my makeup, but I do different things throughout every single day. Like I don't try to now let a day pass without me having some type of communication. I pray prayers that's asking God to inhabit this space I gotta go in, especially when I gotta go to work. Ooh, child. I be having to pray. But I ask him to, especially when I gotta do something hard, Lord, come with me in here. If I gotta go to a doctor's appointment or something that, so I feel that we're in partnership.
Mhm.
I didn't always feel like that. And I haven't always reacted that way, So the pandemic to me was really hard on me. I am by nature a reclusive person. I can communicate, I can be around people, but where I really feel good and at my best is by myself. I feel, it's me. I'm left to my thoughts. I'm left to. So the pandemic, it did have effects on me that I didn't really know while we were in it. But I feel like it impacted my walk with God. I felt like initially I was praying and like, okay, Lord, I don't know what this is, but I know you're in control, and then just being home and it was other things that was louder than him. Let me put it that way. So watching the news, you could look on your phone and it could tell you how many people was in the hospital and how many, like I was entertaining more things over him, watching Netflix every anything you can binge, and so that's how I purposely carve out time for him. So it's not like I stumbled upon this time, I give him my leftovers. I purposely now make time for him. And in return, I mean, it's been a beautiful thing. It's not the life don't still happen to me. but it's my response to it. That time with him is making all the difference for me. And I have bad days, and I don't get me wrong, I can slip from that, but and getting an understanding of who he is and asking him, like you said, folks say don't ask. I question God every day. Jesus, why? But I need to get an understanding. Is it me? Am I looking at the situation wrong? How should I respond to this? This really hurt my feelings. I can give that to him and be just as vulnerable as I want to be with God. I don't make it a habit to lie to him. He already knows the truth. So I go ahead and spill all the beans. I shouldn't have said that, or when I said this, it's frustrating because and then God corrects that. Mm-hmm. This is how you should look. We've had arguments, and I'm thinking, oh, Lord, this man has said this. I'm so frustrated, in my quiet prayer closet. And God said, well, you did say that. I see me. It brings to my remembrance something how I offended you. But you can't have this back and forth without making room for it.
In the Bible that I think of with those situations, and this is, what I would challenge any Christian on is Jonah. He was going through some really, really tough situations in his life, and he got to the point where he was asking God questions, and ultimately, and I think part of us not wanting to ask God questions sometimes might be that we don't want to know the answer, because the answer might be something in us. It might be us, not being as perfect as we think we are, or having to do some work on ourselves, in that situation, our choices, So, but to your point, I think that was one of the key things, for me personally too, is asking God tough questions. Right. Things happen in our life all the time, and you can, if you're honest with yourself, you want to know why. People are hurt. People hurt you, and you don't have the explanation of it, and no one can really give you an explanation of it. Sometimes those people aren't even in your life anymore. They're not even here anymore to answer the question themselves. Right. And all you can really lean on is God when it comes to those type of things. And we started this show off talking about relationships and communication. So right. that's that same process of constantly talking to God, and the more we're talking to him and giving him this tough stuff, the more trust. Like, I trust God so much now. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to say 100% of the time I trust him in everything. Like, my faith is like just that immaculate, but it's not. It's that constant building, and as God does this in your life, or as he reveals this in your life, or reveals this about you, then that trust just continues to grow and get stronger. Every day and every time you're having that conversation with them. And that's why I think it's a process.
Definitely is a process.
I think it's a lifetime process. Like, right. It's something that we, should strive for on a regular basis. And so the difference for me for religion is prayer, right? Prayer and relationship. Prayer and relationship is talking like me and you talking right now, like right. you said, or just talking to God throughout the day or whatever. Whereas religious prayer is like what the Pharisees and used to walk around, thou, using big words and making sure you say things in a certain way, when God just really wants to hear your heart. He wants to hear it from you. And the whole weird thing about it, the more you know about God, the more he already knows what's going on. It's like he wants to let us figure out what's going on. He wants to reveal certain things to us. So
I will add to this. I did mention this, and I'm not a big, you go to church with me. I'm not a big outwardly, I'm not standing up. I'm not really doing a whole lot, pretty still.
You are more so now, though.
When they say Slap your neighbor. They do that like 3, and they be like, slap 7 people. I'm gonna do like 3 people. I'm like, I won't give you half of that, but I'm just pretty still. And to the point, I am getting better about it because what I have found that I absolutely enjoy now is worship. Worship is the key to everything. It's like, to me, it's like this transfer over. It's like when I'm praying, you could get in the habit of coming to God with problems. You know what I mean? But worship is like taking your God to your problems. You know what I'm saying? It's like, let me tell you about my God. You know what I mean? And every time I worship, I walk out feeling so much better than when I went in. You know what I mean?
Well, Pastor Mike Todd said in one of his messages, I think it was Pastor Mike Todd, that worship is the only thing that we can give God.
Mm.
That's really the only thing we can give him.
I don't know
his
that I
worth
understand
is
it.
telling him how much he's worth.
Right.
That he is worthy. He is great. He
Yeah.
is, so that's, so when we talk about relationships, right? Like, we can give God our problems all day. We can tell him all our issues all day long, and he can fix it and he can do something for us. But the one thing that he needs, when we're talking about relationship, is that worship.
Yeah.
And it says that he inhabits the praise and the worship, right? So that's why, I think during worship we feel him more. We feel more of a connection because he gets this joy and he gets this happiness, with it, because we're giving him something that only we can give him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And we were created for worship. Before I was created to be a mom, a daughter, a wife, all these things, I was created for worship. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I think along my walk, I struggled the most, because it is kind of coming from a thing from religion. You see people do it a whole bunch in church. Like, does it take all that? But once I started to express my worship in the way that I express it, I just was like, man, I've been missing out. It's life-saving. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can feel when I'm depleted. Like, I can feel like when I haven't really done it. You know what I mean? And it's no circumstances. Everything is the same. But when you go into worship and you come out, it's just like, I just feel so amazing. And I feel so filled with peace. Whatever I went in with on my back. I think we were looking at a pastor that was saying that we were sheep, that we weren't created to carry. That's mind blowing. Mm-hmm. I'm over here loading it up every day, putting it on my back. And I was not even created for that, So no wonder it's hard to walk up a steep hill, because I'm doing something that I wasn't made to do. And so that transfer happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that I'm, where my frailties are and where I end. You know what I mean? But where God picks up, it ain't no failure for him. So
we got 3 points so far. Communication.
Okay.
Constant communication with God.
Yes.
Transparent communication. I want to, put some separation, to.
Okay. Communication, transparency in your communication.
Bringing your trauma. Bringing, your questions, your real. Yeah. What you say? You're dirty. You're, you're everything. You're just bringing it to him, in worship. I like. And think about worship practically, right? Mm-hmm. Like, as a human, as a human couple, you like when I appreciate you, right? I like when you appreciate me and tell me, I did a great thing and I'm good. That's. I heard a person that was an atheist say one time that, he just created us because he wanted people to worship him or whatever. And, they said it like it was a bad thing. Yeah. But think about all the things God has given us. And the only thing that we have to give him back is appreciation. Is to tell him we thank him and we love him and we he's worthy.
And just because
Like,
though, it don't even
that just shows, like, I mean, mentally how that person might even feel
Right.
about a relationship.
Because we are humans that live with condition. So it's hard for us to think of a concept of we live in supply and demand in everything we do.
Mhm.
And that's why sometimes, like you mentioned, the trauma, sometimes if we're honest about a situation, we only got into that situation because it yielded something. It might have been
And we think God didn't
a
care.
little bit of piece of it, when it really reality it was nothing, but it was an exchange type of situation happening. A lot of relationships happen like that where you really ain't built on really nothing. There's no foundation there, but because I got a little piece of a man, or I got a little piece of this, and then that person flip out, and you mad at God, like, I asked you, which is a common prayer that I pray, by the way, if this person's not for me, Lord, remove them. And it's like, he would have never even, that person's so dingy and dirty, y'all would have never even had an encounter if it were left up to him. That he finds us and has already deemed us worthy. Mm-hmm. So before the foundation of the world, it says that he knew us. So by you knowing us, in my ghetto version of it, is that we had a conversation. Mm-hmm. In the heavens, and he said, hey, I'm gonna dispatch you at such a time, but when you get there, don't forget that I already qualified you. I already called you. So we get here, we go through the same process of being birthed, and all of these life traumas and things are happening to us, and in that process, we forget that we're already qualified. So that leads us to being with people that are lower than the standard that God would have for us. But we're learning through that. You know what I'm saying? So again, I don't know where I was going with this, but anyways, I was thinking about my conversation that I would be having in the heavens. But anyways, I really feel that accountability of that part of some of the things that we've have experienced and have happened to us. Not everything. Some stuff just ain't even on us. But there's some things where it was on us. Maybe we entertained somebody that we shouldn't entertain. Maybe, when you were single and you in your 20s, people think we've been married forever. We haven't. they listen to us like, well, you don't know what I feel. You thought I was born out the womb married? Like, no, I've been single before, So, but with that being the case, we know what it's like to be lonely. We know what it's like to try to fill a void. You know what I'm saying? And so those are the very times that you have to learn to not reach for that and reach for this, right. And by bumping your head a million times, that'll start making you, let me reach for this, because I'm tired of this. When we were just friends, I didn't see you in a relationship at all, and I was at that, cusp in my life, like, Lord, is it no good men in the world, like, doing my little walk of shame and everything, and it's like, come on. But these were decisions that I was choosing and situations I was choosing to put myself in, and I knew that they were less than. Going into them, I knew that they were less than.
So that leads me to, I think another principle I think is good for building relationship with God, and it's the scripture. And notice, when I edit this, I'll go ahead and put the scriptures in there for y'all, so y'all know I'm not making this up. But when God says that we have to deal with the beam in our own eye before we can, take the speck out of somebody else's eye, yeah. Right? You've talked a lot about accountability, yeah. And looking at how we make our decisions. So it goes back I think it ties hand in hand to, like, being transparent and questioning, asking God questions, tough questions. Mm-hmm. But the accountability of us making better decisions and knowing that, some of the things that we're dealing with is because of decisions we chose to do outside of God's guidance. Like, people look at, all the 10 commandments or things like God does to have fun or do anything, but it's like He's our parent, again, he knows that if this stove is hot and you touch it, you're going to get burnt.
Right.
It has its own built-in consequence in it. And he's trying to protect us from it. But we look at it as he's trying to control us, or he's trying to, make us do something that we don't want to do. And he's just really trying to protect us from ourselves in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I hear you're saying when you're talking about these relationships. Like we, I remember being a young man and looking, for women based out of just outward appearance or whatever was attractive to me at that time, or
fun, huh?
of course, of course. But again, that was probably the gist of what I was looking for. I didn't know enough yet in life,
right.
and I wasn't patient enough to do the things that God has prescribed that I heard on all these church sermons and stuff. To do that, like I wanted it now, and I thought I knew enough to do that. And so when you start having a relationship with God, you can look back in those situations. And I remember, like you said, like what started this part of the conversation is being mad at God. Like, I did everything you want. I went to church and I prayed and I did this, and you still took my family away from me. You still took my kid. You still took my wife. You know what I mean? I remember years of feeling that way until God really brought it back to me. And I started understanding my part in that situation and understanding what he still gave me the grace to be able to do even in those situations. You know what I mean?
Layers to the walk. I mean, we're complex beings. We got things that we self-inflicted wounds, and we got wounds that were out of our control, and then we got environmental type things. You're around people, so you learn, what they do, and just doing whatever, and or just living without consequences, or just like, I'm just gonna do this YOLO and all this kind of young stuff, and then you end up having all this extra baggage and extra wounds and then that's how you show up at the altar. Ready, hey, I'm ready to get married. You say I do, and then you get into that relationship in the confines under a roof, and it's no wonder it's explosive, because it's so much work to be done there. And I see like a lot of stuff like singles conferences and all these different groups and all this kind of stuff, encouraging people to work on themselves while they're single. But you could really be doing all of that, but what really, when you get married, that tool is so sharp. You know what I'm saying? Like, in this relationship, I've learned so much about myself that was uncovered. You know what I'm saying? That I didn't even know. It was so bad I didn't have a name that I could put to it. I don't do that. That's not my problem. And it's been like a discovery,
Mm-hmm.
The one thing, and this is way off topic. Yeah, way off topic.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be
God
me.
relationship.
Yeah, but no, it wouldn't be me if it wouldn't be all over the place. One thing I will say about marriage is that the picture of it looks a lot like the picture that you put your relationship you have with God. But the fact of, like you said, you think that being a Christian is dull or it's boring or it's, whatever. And then marriage is looked upon the same way. Like, when you single, you out there getting it. You having the time of
you're getting it.
Right, you think you have it, but when you get married, you get to where that's really the fun time. Because now you married, so anything is up for grabs. When you're married, you can travel, we have a thing that's between us where we experience first together. That's our thing, to go find, this is our first to do together, that only we've shared together. And so you have all of this excitement that you have the opportunity in your hands to have in marriage. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way I feel about your relationship with God. We look at it from a structure standpoint, the religious standpoint of it, but I mean,
and that's what I think
I have a good
pushes
time with
people
God.
away from religion, or from God is because they see this structure, right? And don't, and I've said this before, like I think there's a place for religion. I think for new people who are just coming in and understanding, who God is, and prayer and the basic foundation of it,
I would say
the
the
milk of
foundation.
it.
Yeah.
That's what religion is good for. You know what I mean? When people just coming in and doing whatever they wanted to do in church, there probably has to be some type of structure with that, right? But at some point, there needs to be that transition of you as an individual seeking God. Like the other thing that happens when we stay in just religion is that we just stay in church.
Yeah.
I heard a pastor say this recently, and I think this is just the anointing of where God is leading. Bishop is even, talking about this. Like God called us as Christians to go out into the world and make disciples.
Right.
Like not bring them to church or, just bring them to church and, invite everybody to church or whatever, but to actually go out in the world to be his representation at work, to be his representation at school, to be his representation wherever we're at. Like we're supposed to be bringing that light to him. And if people really do believe in revelations and the end of the world and stuff like that, then churches at some point might be obsolete. So what happens? Like, is God not supposed to exist or be who he is now? No, he's supposed, like you said earlier, we are the church. So, with the mindset of a relationship, and when you're having a relationship with God, God starts talking to you individually about your purpose, your individual purpose in this whole big scheme of things, right? So if you just go to church, and I've seen people say, oh, I'm thinking about, maybe a Christian artist or something, like, oh, he does music like this, and he doesn't say Jesus 10 times in his song or whatever.
Okay.
And that's not biblical and da da da. But when you listen to the content, what they're saying is in line with what God's truth and God's principles for our life. He's just creative enough not to have to use the word Jesus for it. But we knock on that because what I think it is we're so religious. We feel like in that Bible that if it's not like it's written in this Bible, then it's not true. As if God's not still talking to us. Like as if he's not still having conversations with us.
And what if they don't? What if the lyrics to their song is not godly at all? I think what we really forget about, we forget that people are in transition, that we're all in transition. I remember a while back, and again, I'm not into the news, so I might mess this up, but when Kanye West was doing his Sunday service concerts, and everybody was up in arms, and I think somebody prayed for Justin Bieber.
That's kind of weird.
Justin Bieber. The point is, I get it, but what I am saying is we need to let God finish his work in all of us.
Absolutely.
So I think that sometimes we're seeing, like, especially in the music, artists get a lot of pushback on you. I heard something where it said, oh, you're not anointed anymore to do that. And, we put our mouths on stuff that we're just really watching somebody in transition. Let's say that they did mess up. Let's say whatever they were doing at that moment wasn't pleasing to God. That's between that person and God. We really shouldn't be looking at something that's not a finished product and being like, that.
Absolutely agree.
That's the part of religion that, because I didn't really grow up in church like that, that's the part of it I don't like. Is back to my word grace. It's just we're very hard on people, and I watch people that are older in that older regime of religion, and sometimes they don't be having relationships with their kids. Sometimes they don't, they spend holidays by themselves. My God, how could you have God in your life the way you got God in your life and be the loneliest person? Like, being connected to God gives you resources, and the greatest resource is people. When you connect with God, you got access to, my life is fun because he's connected me with so many other beautiful kids of his. You know what I'm saying? And I get to enjoy and learn from them and commune with them, worship with them. We're with other Our couples retreats, that we get to go on with some of the baddest people in the world. I love them, but that's because of our connection with the Lord. You know what I mean? And so,
Man, I think my point with this though is like like when we have a relationship with God, we start getting personal direction from God for our lives.
correct.
And you always say this because we listen to some people online and they'll be like, "Well, God gave me a word for the church and
Oh,
gave me a word for you today or whatever."
all
And
right.
you know what I've come to realize with me as far as a relationship with God, and I know you've said this before, is that normally that word is for me first. It's for me to pay attention to, and it's for a portion of my life. And yes, it might be beneficial, and a lot of the things that I've learned by myself and on this journey, I'm transparent enough to share.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I'm supposed to give it to you and it just completely ignore the fact that God gave it to me for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or so when I'm talking about these different songs and things like that, I'm talking about like legit Christian rappers
Right.
that are far along in their season, but or singers or comedians or whatever, and you know people are given a hard time because again they're looking through it from a religious lens and not a lens that, to your point, that gives people grace and season, or even the possibility that God is leading this person to do things this way, which may not look like whatever you've done in your church before, or whatever. Like it could be a new thing.
Right.
It could be what's needed for this season or for this generation of people.
Right.
And if you look at the Bible, I'm not saying anything that's heresy or anything like that. Like the people coming out of Egypt needed different miracles or different signs or different processes, to understand than people who, when they were battling the Canaanites and when Jesus was walking, like there was always a season or something that God was doing for that group of people. You know what I mean? Otherwise, we wouldn't have all these different Bible studies. He would have did it the same way every single time.
Right.
But he did it the way he needed to. Like, do we trust God enough to know that one, he is taking people through a process and a season of a process of growth, and they could be at any of these different levels with it. And two, do we trust that he knows what he's doing? Like with that, like the only thing that really matters is that, like the Bible says, is Jesus preached. Like is he what we're giving the people that we're talking to? Is he the content? Is the essence of who he is and
Right.
the content of what we're doing there?
And that's why the fruits of the spirit is so important. In my ghetto Bible, you just need to keep your body parts to yourself. Keep your mouth off people. Keep your hands off people. Keep your opinions off of. Especially women. My God, women are so harsh on each other. Look at her. She thinks she all that. This lady just walked in. Why are we on her? You know what I mean? It's like we're so critical. But as women, we know what it's like to be a woman. Like, cut us some slack, So that's a practice type behavior just in general as Christians. We have to take our mouths. I think that's why social media gets on my nerves for many reasons. But it's just these Christian TikTok and it's criticizing pastors and all these different people, and they the devil and they're a false prophet, and they put so much energy into that. Why worry about that? Get in the ministry and mind your own business. Just get in it. That's not your business. Because if that God that you believe in, who is all encompassing, who's sitting on this whole world, he gonna deal with that. He don't need you to do that. So when people be like, I just gotta tell it, dumb be the people, I be like, man, Jesus, you're gonna have to save me, because you don't.
Well, they're the same people that would correct Keke Palmer on Twitter.
You don't need to say it.
Or post
Everybody.
Jonah Hill's text. Like again, like you want to address people in public, and that there are situations like even in our relationship, like where God may put it on my heart to talk to you about something, or God may put
Correct.
it on your heart to talk, but it's a private situation. Galatians 6, if you need Bible for that, tells us what we need to do for that. It's definitely not a public situation, and it's definitely not a
But
situation
we
that
gotta
would
tell
put
the
people
truth.
in.
We struggle with telling the truth in love. We love to tell the truth. I just gotta say I'm real. I done met so
Are
many
you?
real people in my life
Are
that
you?
you just gotta tell
Are
it.
you? Are
You
you?
gotta tell it. You want to crush down on somebody. I'm sorry. That's just the way I am. And it's like, what was all that about? These weakest people. You tell friend got to pass out because you offended them, but they're real. It's like just because you see a thing don't mean you need to say a thing. You don't. It's not up to us to always. God could have revealed something to us when we weren't where we were supposed to be, and now we got it. But now we feel like we need to. Oh, look at them over there. That was just you. So chill out.
Probably still is.
Exactly. So, I'm trying, I think that to your point of developing your relationship with God is I'm after just nothing. I'm not asking him for anything. I'm just really in Matthew 6:33. First seek the kingdom. I don't need to read the rest of that. Just first seek the kingdom. Like that's the agenda every day. With that, it's so much goodness that's happening in my character. That was explosive. Like you working on this, like I don't say that no more. I don't want to do this. Now some other stuff he showed me to get on top of, but to just have this transition of just seeking him, not for no appearance, just because I love him. You know what I mean? It's transformative. It's changing me. And through that, ironically, because you brought it up, and you and Sonya, y'all the best people, hands down. And I'm not saying this because you're my boo, but y'all the best people I ever heard talk about purpose. Like anytime you guys get together and talk about purpose, like at events and things like that, oh my gosh, if anybody wants to understand purpose, hit them up, DM them, because years ago you guys talked about it. When I heard it the first time, I was like, that's powerful, but in my walk right now, that's seeds that you guys planted. God has been watering them, and he's been sharing so much with me about my purpose, what it is I'm here to do, and it's mind blowing, but I had to learn to try to love God in an unconditional way, to love him like he loves me, which is hard, but he first loved us. And the love that he displayed it in was giving his only begotten son. Like, I can't match that. I can't beat that, so.
So do me a favor, because we got to wrap this up.
Okay, yes. I want you to invite me back. I want to come back and be the fourth member.
No, we're gonna do. Well, you can come back anytime.
Okay.
But pillow talk.
Yes, pillow talk.
We're gonna definitely do that.
Yes.
And the last thing that you just said, I know is one of the topics we talked about, which is, fellas. She just mentioned that God loved us first, right? And so I know one of the things that I'd like to contribute to your pillow talk is just talk about the fact of what that really looks like.
Yeah.
Of loving our wives as Christ loved the church, like what that really means. Like I want to talk about that from a guy's standpoint, and I'm sure you have a woman's standpoint.
I don't right now, but I'll be ready.
But you can look forward to stuff like that with pillow talk.
Yeah.
As far as this relationship with God conversation, thank you for having this with
Thank
me.
you.
I want to, make sure that we leave it open for our listeners, to add to it.
Yeah.
Like, how did you get
share your ways? Yeah, share some of your pointers on how you built your relationship or currently building a relationship with God.
How what's the process? What are you looking at there? For us, we named just 4 things, and I actually have 5 or 6 things on my list. But the communication with God, like the open, transparent communication with God, the trusting of God, the worship of God, like really worshiping him and having time where you're spending with him, where you're not asking for anything, but you're just giving him what he deserves and what he desires, from us. The ability to bring our trauma to God and our issues and our problems, our real emotions to him, and allowing him to respond. And I think the fifth thing is the accountability, for our own, issues, our own struggles in life that we've placed on God.
Right.
Be willing to take some accountability with those things and really allow him to build us as people, which again, ultimately, turns back into that trust thing for me. The only other thing I was going to add is even how we read the Bible, like putting ourselves in the place of those characters in the Bible. I'll talk more about that on a future episode of the Re-Up.
Get your real host back.
Other than that, and again, you're welcome to come back anytime. It's always a pleasure to have my wife on these shows. Y'all hear me talk about her all the time. So
they wonder, do you got a wife like the church?
That's an inside joke.
Yeah, that's an inside joke. Do you really have a wife?
We'll share that on a Pillow Talk one day. And our producer, go ahead and close us out.
Welcome to the Re-Up, talk show, where we're kicking it